Merry Christmas. My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober, and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. Very cool to be here on Christmas Eve and get to share it with other alcoholics. I've said this a million times. 3 places I'm most comfortable. I feel safest is in AA church and when I'm with my wife. So I'm glad to be here. June 23rd, 1988 is when God separated me from alcohol. I'm very grateful for this gift of sobriety, especially when it kind of gets this time of year. This is I always call it like a cozy holiday. Everything looks so nice outside. The house is decorated, most of us, and there's just something really cool about it. I do have a sponsor I spoke to a few hours ago. Bob Bizan out of St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm sponsoring a dozen guys, and I have a home group. No Problems, Just Solutions. It's a really long name for a group. By the time you say it, you have 90 days. But we're located in Boca Raton on Wednesday night at 7:30, so it's just a wonderful place to be. Meeting starts at 7:30, and we're there early. We're kind of like here, hanging out, and the meeting ends at 8:30, and we're there hanging out after the meeting, which I really love. Before we get going, I'm going to do 12-step, I guess tonight, next week. Just a quick story. It was December 23rd, early 80s. I took my first arrest. And I'm looking by this crowd out here. I think a lot of you guys know what it's like to be arrested. Anyway. No? Okay. First arrest is scary as heck. I was petrified. I don't know what was going to happen to me. When the cuffs went on, I was sitting underneath the FDR Drive in Lower Manhattan across the street from the New York Post building, if anyone knows that area. And I had left work for lunch, and I had a pint of Jack Daniels, and I picked up some non-conference approved dry goods. And I was sitting in the car with someone, and there's a bang on my door and window, and there they were. The housing police, they call them. And they're not a fun crew to run into. And next thing I know, they give me the pat down through the car, handcuffs go on, they found what they found, and my life changed for a while. I went from housing police station to the Tombs in 100 Center Street, and I'm thinking I'm going to get the electric chair. I mean, it's all over. And I get in there, there's all the jailhouse lawyers telling me exactly what's going to happen. And, some people reached out, and one after I made my... Well, you don't really make a phone call like on Law and Order. It's a little different. The cop made the call for me and told me, told them why I was there. It was really ugly. And... every Christmas Eve, my family would get together. And it was another Christmas I ruined. This one had a little bit more impact because I first arrest. My brothers ended up being arrested. This is the first arrest. And my family was thrown upside down. And all I could think about was me. And I got released ROR, I don't know how many hours later. And my dad had to go get a lawyer. And, the whole process. And I got off the hook, if you will. But it was another time where I ruined everything. I ruined a lot of holidays because of this self-imposed crisis. And when I get sober, it's like, how do you make it back? How do you give back? And I just want to share something that has just tremendous impact for me, and it's the beginning of a vision for you. And this is what it reads. It says, for most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It's happening now. People are out, making toasts and drinking, getting drunk, and having a blast. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with those in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. At this point, we're too far gone. It's the wishing that something would happen, that I can use dope successfully or drink successfully and have enough money to do it without working. There was always one more attempt and one more failure, and then it gets really ugly. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society and from life itself, and I blamed society and life itself. I would not look at me. As we became, this is wild, as became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mailed realm, shivering, shaking uncontrollably because of fear. Denizens, I'm an inhabitant. When it says mad, it means evil. And realm is his kingdom. This is talking about living in Satan's house. The chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to the hideous four horsemen. And this is from Apocalypse in Scripture. It says terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. And in Scripture, it's war, famine, pestilence, and death. That's my life before Alcoholics Anonymous and getting a sponsor. I was in a car on 17th Street and 7th Avenue in Manhattan. There was famous Barney's clothes store across the street, and I was with a young lady, a running partner. You know how that goes. And I pull up a double park in the middle of the avenue, and she went into what was called a pizza store, but they really didn't sell pizza. You went in there to get other stuff. And as I'm waiting, I see this guy that I know from that Lower West Side who was a bad guy. He might still be in jail forever, but he was a bad guy. And unbeknownst to me, he used to date the lady I was with. And he pops out of a doorway with the brown paper bag in his hand. And I know there's not whiskey in the brown paper bag. There's a weapon. And she saw him jump in the car, and we had to get out of there. And I kid you not, he kneeled down on one knee on 7th Avenue, 17th Street, and fired off I don't know how many shots at my car. And till this day, I'm so grateful that it was obviously a low caliber, it wasn't like a big bullet. And off I go. And I had to get home, because if I didn't, my dad would send his friends out looking for me, and I'd rather face the police. And I park about 4 blocks away, because what had happened, there were bullet holes in the trunk. The back window was shattered. The right rear window was shattered, and there was a hole in the roof of the car. And I was unscathed. And so was that girl. And there's a knock at my door, because I wake up early as an active alcoholic around 11:30 a.m. And there's a banging on my door, and it's my dad, and screaming at me, "Where's the car?" And I said, "Well, I parked off the corner. There were no parking spots last night." And he said, "Go get it." And he came back, and he said, "There's no car on the corner." And I'm still getting dressed. I never got to the car yet. And he said, "I want the car in front of the house in 5 minutes." So I walk away, and I'm thinking I can just take off. But I'd done that before. My dad would make a couple of calls, and I get found. It was like I had a GPS attached to me. One of his friends would always find me. My dad had friends all over the place. And so I said, I got to face the music, and took a deep breath, and I drive up to the house in the car in that condition. And my dad went up one side, down the other on me. He was very intimidating, and his voice would get deep and loud. He'd shake you loose in a second. And that's what he was doing right on the sidewalk. And we went inside, and he continued. And I knew I couldn't even say anything. There was no reply here. And we went into the kitchen, and when he finally kind of calmed down, he asked me some questions. He said, "Do you know who did this?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "You know his name?" He says, "Yeah." "Do you know where he hangs out?" "Yeah." He says, "What I want you to do, I'm going to drive you to the city tomorrow. I'm going to be with a couple of my friends. I just want you to point them out and walk away." Now, I knew it was about to happen. And at that point, my brothers run into the kitchen, because they were in the living room. And my middle brother saying, "He's not worth it. Don't do this." And they were pleading with my dad. They wanted to kill me, my brothers. "Don't do this. He's not worth it." I was highly insulted by that. And my dad calmed down and nothing ever happened. But my point of this story, when the big book says in Family Afterwards that years of living with an alcoholic can make any child or wife neurotic, the whole family to some extent become ill, this is what I'm looking at. Violence was a way of settling things. That's how my dad did stuff. And he was going to do it again and risk his life and maybe even going to prison because I'm a knucklehead and I get caught in these people. It wasn't that guy's fault in the doorway. I did a fourth and fifth step. That guy was who he was. But I'm involved in that life, and that's the life. Things like this happen. If I was clean and sober in an AA meeting, this would not be part of my story. I wouldn't even be here. But that's not my story. My story was I was in that life, the street life, the gutter life. I don't mean street life like I was some sort of tough guy, but the alcoholic, dope fiend life, these things happen, and I was about to bring my whole family in. Because that's what my dad would do. You come into the house, figuratively speaking, I hit back. And I'm so grateful it worked out that way. And it was another episode, another debacle in my house. And then I get sober in 1988. And conversely, here's what happens. When we're practicing principles in all our affairs, not talking about them. Anyone can talk about these principles. Anyone can get behind this podium after studying a book and give a fabulous 12-step talk. It means nothing. It's empty. It's what it's like. What does this work look like going live? When adversity hits, when good times hit, when there's a birth of a baby or a divorce. How am I doing? What kind of principles am I practicing? I took a red-eye Sunday night from Los Angeles to get home Monday morning, and it's interesting in the airport around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when you're boarding at 11. It's a strange. It looks like almost an after-hours place. It's very weird, and you really need to practice principles in that affair. What's it look like live? Well, it was a few years later. I'm finally sober, and I get my first apartment, and any money I saved went to the first month and last month and all the things they shake you down for when you get an apartment. And, it was empty. It was a shell. And I'm sleeping on a futon foam thing, and there was no phone in there. There was nothing. And one Saturday morning, the doorbell rings, and it's my dad who's at the door. And he's standing at the doorway with two boxes. One box under each arm, and one was the starter kits for dishes and cups and saucers, like serving for four, and the other was a Mr. Coffee pot. And he said, "Can I come in?" Of course. And I'm a nervous wreck at this point. I had a little round table, a seating for two. And we sat down at that table. It's really close. And, my dad's steel blue eyes, I'm falling apart. I'm really nervous. So I clean out the coffee pot. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. And we sit down in close proximity, and we're talking, and my dad's just staring at me. And I start to fix my hair, fix my shirt. He thinks I'm drunk. He thinks I'm high. Oh, my God, I'm dying. I can't even drink this coffee. My belly's just vibrating. My heart's pounding. And my dad's just talking, but he's staring at me. And then he left. Well, it was a long time later. My dad was telling me there was a few of his friends sitting around. He was talking about that day. And he said I couldn't stop staring at my son because of the change that came over him, that I was able to sit down and have a cup of coffee with my son, who was now a gentleman. He became a man. And he gave praise to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's a long way from getting arrested or getting shot at on 17th Street. And there was the beginning of a shift in the relationship with my dad and with my brothers and, quite frankly, the rest of my family. Little by slowly, a much more important demonstrations of our principles lies before us, our book says, in our homes, occupations, and affairs. It doesn't say affairs, occupation. If you get a chance, do it at home. Home first. I could be an AA angel and a house devil. It's about what it looks like home. And so I got my job back, and I started doing what AA taught me to do, get there early and leave late, and that's what I was doing. And I'd show up for work and I'd get paid and I had money from the previous payday. This was insane. This had never happened to me before. And so I started to walk this out and practice these principles in all my affairs. And here's why. Live life forward and understand it backwards. I wasn't doing it only because my sponsor told me. And I wasn't doing it just to report back to you that I'm trying to practice principles in all my affairs. I couldn't not practice principles in all my affairs. I was made anew in Alcoholics Anonymous, thank you God, in the 12 steps and the sacred fellowship. I couldn't just show up for work late. I couldn't gate crash my job anymore. I couldn't spend my paycheck as soon as it arrived. And when you're not drinking or taking drugs, it seems to have a lot more money in your pocket. And Flacco's not looking for you. It's a pretty cool deal. And so that's what I was doing. And then, parents, my dad and grandparents would have a get-together and say, would you like to come? Now I'm getting invited. And so I would show up on time. And when the thing was breaking up, I'd be in the kitchen helping with dishes and things like that. So I was participating. I've often talked about participate, cooperate, and cultivate with God and with others. And so without even realizing it, this Spirit's moving me to do things like this. Little by slowly, chopping wood and carrying water. And I'd always report back to my sponsors how to go with the family, And then Christmases would come and go, and Thanksgiving, and all the highlight holidays, including birthday parties. And then I just started to show up. I would visit my grandparents just to say, hi, how you doing? My sponsor gave me a great idea. He says, you send Christmas cards out, you send birthday cards out. Why don't you just send some cards out just for the hell of it? And I would send my dad or my brothers or my grandparents a card just thinking of you. None of them had computers back then, so just send off a card, drop it in the mail. And they'd call you, I just got a card, thank you so much. That was for me practicing principles in all my affairs. When I was at work, I was a thief. While I had my job back in the day, I'd steal anything that wasn't nailed down. I was a longshoreman, and there were a lot of things to steal and a lot of ways to make side money that were illegal. I could lose my job, but when you're in that life, you don't care. I'll pay any price tomorrow to see comfort right now. And so I was doing that stuff. And when I finally get sober and I get my job back, a lot of those guys that I was running with and doing illegal things, they would say, hey, you want to go do this? I said, I don't do that anymore. They would, what do you mean? There's good money. I don't do that anymore. And sometimes truck drivers pull in and they would look to give me $20 to look the other way on something. Say, look, you got the wrong guy. I don't do that anymore. And I got to admit, that felt kind of clean and good, that I wasn't that guy anymore. And little by little, they walked away from me, and I started to get respect from coworkers, and I never had that. I became reliable and dependable, and I'm not that good, but God is that great to practice principles in all my affairs. It's vital to me now. I'm sober a few birthdays now, and I've seen a few birthdays. I'm a little older. I can't even fathom, playing the role in Alcoholics Anonymous and going home and my wife becomes afraid of me in the house, or no one can depend on me or trust me. So, what AA has done, as far as our 12-step, when it says having had a spiritual awakening, they're almost looking back on it now that we will have one. They're saying, hey, we had one. Having had this, what do we do with it? Having had this spiritual awakening, this personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism, not alcoholism. I will have alcoholism till the day I die. But I don't have to have it acting out in my life. I don't look like or sound like or behave like a drunk anymore. And that's only because of God's mercy. When I got in Alcoholics Anonymous, this personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism to the point where we get recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Not cured, but recovered. The problem, this thing called alcoholism, will be with me till God gives me my last breath. But I don't have to look or sound or act like an alcoholic, recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. What a tremendous promise to offer a new one. That my life isn't, something happens, oh, I got a trigger, I got an issue, I have drink signals. That stuff gets plucked away. Step 10 talks about it. Now we're free. And what we have to do is I have to be God's boots on the ground, because that's why he hired me. My job, he hired me. He said, I'm going to get you sober. I'm hiring you to go to this place called AA and bring my kids to me little by slowly. And you're going to lose some, but you stand by the door and keep bringing them in. That's my job today. I have a job, I have a career, I have a lot of chores I do, but my primary purpose in this life is to stay sober. God's going to do that for me with the help of AA and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. Everything else is second. And sometimes the things I get in AA will keep me from AA. The money, the relationship, working out. It's a nice day. I'll go to the beach. I'll go to a meeting tomorrow. My actions start to prove to others that I forgot I'm alcoholic because I've gotten away from step 1. And then the drunk will say, oh, no, I know I'm an alcoholic. But you haven't made a meeting in a week. You forgot you're alcoholic. Or somehow I think I can control when I'm going to drink or not. It's not what I say. It's what I do. And I'm very grateful to sponsors who were able to teach me this and lead by example. And I'll say this as well. I'm not a model or an example for Alcoholics Anonymous. You're looking at a flawed, broken individual. Isn't that cool? I hope I never appear to be all polished and glossy and, ripping off things out of the book and pretending it's mine and I don't have any problems. I have a mind that's detrimental to me. And it talks to me. And I'm just flawed, the human condition. When God designed me, when God designed us, he made it a flawed model. The soul is perfect. The soul is perfect. But I got this thing called the head, and it is imperfect, and I don't need it. But I listen to it every once in a while, and I got to crawl back to God for help again. That's okay. It's a greater need for God. Why would I need God if I'm God? Why would I need God if I'm perfect? Why would I need God? I got 1 year. I'm cool. I know what to do now. I don't need God anymore. Trust me, if you're a newcomer, the longer you're sober, ask some of the folks. It's like you lean all the way into God because life gets bigger. Relationships, marriage, children, careers, newcomers, sponsees. You really need God with sponsees.
Why?
So I am getting moved to talk about who did this for me. I came to AA and found God. I mean, I never was an atheist. I knew there was something out there. I always believed in the carpenter, but there was no relationship with God. I don't know how to practice principles in all my affairs. I got nothing to offer an alcoholic. And an old timer told me, well, if you got 10 days, you can speak to somebody with a few days. Give them whatever you have. It's a start. Don't deny someone that. If you're sitting here with 3 days and a guy gets a white chip, go talk to him. That's how I got 3 days. I haven't picked up and I've been in like 10 meetings. Good. Let's start with that. Everyone can help. But I'm grateful for the sponsors who really showed me what alcoholism is, what I'm up against, and how deep the roots go on alcoholism and the way out. And they led by example. I had heroes. I still do. I still have heroes in Alcoholics Anonymous. Men and women in AA that I really look up to. I'm a little bit of an older guy, but I want to be like that. I want to do what they do, which is kind of neat because I'm still teachable, thank you, God. I never want to get so well that I think I'm immune from the tactics of my illness. Because it'll get me, the thing about alcoholism will get me where I think I'm good. Whatever I'm doing that I think I'm good, it'll get me there. Well, I know I'm not so good, I'm on guard there, but when I think I got this, it'll sneak right in there. And just start to erode that. But my very first sponsor, his 12-step work presented me with my first step. That's the cool thing about this. That our 12-step becomes someone's first step because we're showing them, whether it's a 12-step call or we're sitting down with them to pass this on and we're cracking open the book and we're moving through the steps. That 12-step is that vital. I'm always looking to sponsor people. I'm a little overloaded right now. With a dozen men, but it's important. It's my lifeline, connecting with a newcomer. And I love when I got one right now who's never been to AA. Probably got about 35, 40 days now. Knows nothing about AA. This is wonderful. It's a clean eraser board. What I tend to get is a lot of the retreads where they got the information and they're not very teachable. And it's pulling teeth. But I do it for fun and for free. The same way I'm here on Christmas Eve. There's a mind would say, you're going to a meeting on Christmas Eve? Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I? You going to Los Angeles like 3 days before Christmas to do a work? Well, yeah, why wouldn't I? It's just the way it goes. And these men, these sponsors, were, to me, great men. They were bulldogs. They weren't politically correct. They weren't warm and fuzzy. They weren't touchy-feely. And some of us need teachers like that. I get that. I would have ran circles around that, as desperate as I was. I was a little intimidated by some of these men because they weren't too interested in how I felt or perceived them. They were more interested in, I just gave you the truth. Now you do what you want with it. You'll be at the meeting tomorrow at 7 o'clock. If you're late, then don't call me. And that's pretty straight. Okay. My first sponsor had me on a call time on Saturday morning was 10 a.m. I had to call him at 10 a.m. and he gave me a 10-minute window. One time I called, it was a quarter after 10. Went to his answering machine. Remember answering machines? Went to his answering machine. He called me back later in the day. He said, I have a life too. You couldn't get up at 10 o'clock. You get a 10-minute window. What's this 20 after, 15 after? No, I move on. And I was insulted by that, but it disciplined me because our book says we alcoholics are undisciplined. We let God discipline us to a spiritual life. And God hired somebody in AA. He became my sponsor, so I worked for him. So I did that. And I've ran up against some tough cookies in my day where they were highly insulted when I gave them a call time. And I'm not your guy. I'm looking for the desperate and dying who want to do this. And so my very first sponsor was a guy named Tony who was about 5'4" by 5'4". And he was a tough guy. I remember this. I asked him, I said, can you sponsor me? He said, I don't know, I'm a pain in the neck. Are you willing to go to any lengths? And the very first assignment he got me, I was just home from Minnesota, was to read the first portion of the big book from preface to page 164. Look for the must and should words. You do that. You got a week to do that. When you're done, call me and we'll talk about sponsorship. I never heard this before. And he showed me in working with others, says we loan him a copy of this book. Having read the first volume, we discussed that you had the second conversation with the drug. Now, I don't do that with every person, especially when they're brand new and vibrating. They may not get through it. But that's what he did with me. So I finished it in a couple of days, called him up. I said, I read it. He says, you think you're an alcoholic? I says, yes. You willing to go to lunch to recover? Yes. He says, I'll sponsor you now. Here's what we're going to do. We opened up the book and did the first step. And there were people in my home group says, don't get him to sponsor, he's too strict. I responded well to that. I had that sponsor for about 8 years, and there was a gentleman who turned my life around, who completely changed my life, who allowed me to look at AA, God, the 12 steps, the traditions, everything from a level, a place I never saw before. He was my greatest teacher, and that was a guy out of Texas named Mark H. And he was my sponsor for a whole bunch of years. It was incredible. We were speaking together at a workshop, and I'm sitting there next to me, this giant, this Mickey Mantle in AA. And I remember feeling like a newcomer with 30 days. And I'm thinking, this is not good. And his sponsor said, that's wonderful. That's called humility. He's the teacher, you're the student. And Mark was my sponsor for a long time, and that's why I came in touch with going through the steps once a year. And that worked for us. That worked for me. The more open I am to people, the more open I become. And so I was going through the steps regularly, and I got into really into spiritual books and gobbling up a lot of books. And Mark was the guy who told me, don't read spiritual books. I said, what do you mean? He says, work with them. They're not novels. And after that, he passed away, and I had men like Gary Brown and Mickey Mussett, Don P., and my current sponsor, Bob B., out of St. Paul. All these men for me were giants in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I learned by watching them, not just what they were saying, by watching them. And I saw what they were doing with life when adversity hit and good times hit, when sickness would come, when good health would come, how they were navigating through all of it. And they were doing it pretty consistent, which I was in awe of. How do you do this? Someone would lose their job and they, hey, I lost my job, and they get, Marion talks about, they get a standing ovation. You'll find something better. This is new. The thing about recovery, it flies in the face of everything I've been taught in my life. Yeah. And so through those spots, especially my first one, I learned how to do a 12-step call. Now, I don't know how many of them happen. I've done a few since I moved to Florida, but treatment centers, fortunately, unfortunately, have taken that that work out of our hands. That's our job to do. To get them to a detox and bring them here. Nothing wrong with a treatment center. I've been in that business for a long time, but there's a downside to it. Where I remember, going to get a guy, having a bottle, nursing him back to health, taking him in the parking lot, a couple of shots, bring him into the meeting. After the meeting, a couple of shots, take him home, couple of shots, put him to bed, and bring him that way back to normal, or taking him to a detox and scooping him up and taking him here while he was rocking and rolling, and little by slowly getting him better. Now we drop them off at some fancy treatment center, and the counselors do our work. And they come in here very attached to their feelings and issues and triggers. I'm grateful for the 12-step calls. And some of them are icky. I going into a motel, I've learned to go right to the front desk. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's my driver's license. I'm with a couple of guys. I never do it alone. You got a crackhead, a drunk, a dope in a room, something. We're going to get him. In case the police come, they know I'm clean. And we'd go in, and then there's Joe, puked on himself, soiled himself, having crying jags or just muttering stuff. Throw him in the shower. That's uncomfortable, showering down another guy because he's filthy. His clothes reek, and then you put him in your car. It's icky. Who else is going to do that work? The police ain't going to do that work. The counselor ain't going to do that work. The treatment center ain't going to do that work unless you have insurance or money. We do that work. And AA is the only place where you can come, you meet in dining. What'd you do last night? What a great night. A drunk puked all over my car. I cleaned him up. We took him to a detox. We didn't get home till 3 o'clock in the morning. When are we going to do it again? And people listening at the other table say, these people are crazy. But that's what we do. It's like soul food. It's muscles. Praying the whole time. I've learned I either pray or become prey. So we pray the whole time. I've done a bunch of those, and I've gotten calls where Mary is drunk and she needs help. The family would call, so I call up the girls, and sometimes I was the driver, but I let the ladies go in there and do that work because I shouldn't be 12-stepping a lady. That's women's work, so we call some of the ladies. And I'll tell you something. My experience, you gals do a lot better job at it than us guys. You guys get like 3 carloads. I got to sometimes pull teeth to get another guy to do a 12-step call with me. We're a little bit lazy. The women are just monsters doing this. And I'm not lying. I'm at 3 carloads. We got it. Pete, you can go home. And then they go do it. So the 12-step call. I remember a handful of guys coming to get me one time, and I didn't want any part of it, and I cursed them out, and they took me to the diner anyway. And I vaguely remember trying to drink coffee. I almost puked when it went down because I was so drunk. I wanted more alcohol. But they were patient with me, and they took me to a meeting, blind drunk. I'm sitting in the back of the room, and everyone at that meeting, kind of foggy, but they were coming over and extending their hand. No one threw me out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm drunk, slobbering, and they keep coming back. And back then, they would write out a number on a piece of paper and give it to you because we didn't have cell phones. You get home and get all these phone numbers. I'm thinking, did I get lucky last night? I have no idea. Got a lot of phone numbers. Having had a spiritual awakening. Experientially, can I talk to you about that? Can we talk to each other about what it's like having a spiritual awakening? What does that look like? What does it feel like? Who is my God? Who do I pray to? What does it sound like in the morning? What does this transformation, this spiritual revolution feel like and look like? And what kind of impact am I having on people? Am I still selfish and self-seeking, or am I giving? Am I still self-centered or God-centered now? What does that look like? I do a lot of workshops, thank you God. And sometimes nothing wrong with this, but I over the years I've seen people attend, a big book workshop here and a conference big book workshop there, and one here and one here and one here, and they're at all of them, and their big books are marked up and really worked on, and notes and stuff, and you can't even see the original print. There's so much writing in it. But sometimes I talk to those folks and they're jammed up all the time. And I remember looking at this, what's the lesson here? A lot of information and not much of a transformation. I've learned this book is the treasure map. I've said this a bunch of times. It's a map. I love this big book. I love everything that's in it. I love the mechanics. I still love talking about mechanics, but that's not what I should be worshiping. I could be worshiping God or the things that point to God. Where am I with that? And early in recovery, I fell in love with mechanics. I became a worshiper of mechanics. I hit a wall. And so, where is this taking me? What does this look like live? And I just wanted to go to, if I can find it. Yeah. Two guys who had a spiritual awakening. One had a white light, and one had one over time. It's in A Vision for You. I know it. I don't have to read it. Or out there, 12-stepping, chasing guys down the street to 12-step them, because Bill and Bob knew their life depended on. Bill was running the streets of New York trying to get drunk, sober, telling about the white light experience, because he knew in trying to work with others, trying to carry this message, you got another day sober. So him and Bob are in Ohio, and they're looking for drunks. We need a drunk. There wasn't 90 meetings in 90 days. There was one meeting. And they started with the Oxford group, so it wasn't like a meeting list that we can go to and hand out a meeting list. It was like pray like a son of a gun and go work with people for 6 days. And the big event once a week was a meeting at someone's home group. That's how that started, home group. At someone's home, they had a meeting. And coffee and cake would be served afterwards. It never got in the way of a meeting. And it must have been cool because no one had a cell phone that they could text in the middle of a meeting and be really rude. They paid attention. Their lives depended on it. So they were chasing down drunks. And they get to the hospital, not the town's hospital, and they got this drunk named Bill Dotson. To me, this is the perfect 12-step call. Bill has 6 months. Bill doesn't have a year when he paid a visit on Dr. Bob. And so he's in Ohio, not even a year sober, and they go to the hospital, and there's Bill Dotson laying in bed in a detox. And they brought him down to from the ward to a private room with 4 people in there, which back in the day meant you were going to get last rites. And he comes to and says, who are you guys and what am I doing in this private room? I bought the farm. What did I do now? Am I, going to die? And they looked down on him. They must have looked like 2 feds because they dressed back then in shirt and tie and fedoras. Imagine coming to, and you got these 2 tall, imposing guys. We're here to treat you for alcoholism. And he says, nothing's going to fix me. I'm a goner. He was in touch with step 1. And you know what they do to him? They knew their life depended upon it. They said, we're not here to sell you anything. We're here for us. We're here to save ourselves. And for an hour, Bill and Bob tell Bill Dotson their story. One drunk identifying with another. It works when everything else fails. Go work with the drunk. It keeps us out of harm's way. That's what they did. They talked about the body, they talked about the mind, and they talked about the spiritual awakening they had as the result of the 12 steps. We can call it that. How they got there. 3 days later, Bill Dotson leaves and he never drank again. He was sitting in a detox bed and they're talking to him about the spiritual answer they found. which means when John or Mary walks in here with 3 days back or 1 day back, I can talk to him or her about the spiritual answer I found and not hide God in a closet, because they knew when that started and how that started and why we allow it. I don't know. But that's what they did. It was successful. It was a perfect 12-step call. I always loved reading it. I always loved talking about it. Can I do that? Go to a detox, sit down with a guy and say, here's what you're up against. Here's the body stuff. Here's the mind stuff. And here's the spiritual answer I found. It works for me. And tell them my story. A lot of us have detox commitments. What are you doing going there? You tell them your story. And we tell them how I'm staying sober, a year, 2 years, 5 years. You notice when you leave there, you're like jacked up after you leave? I don't go to detox to get gratitude on someone else's misery. I go because I can't not go. The 12-step work that we get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous, real quick, it sounds like I'm criticizing outside help, and I'm not. I'm in the outside help. I've been doing it for a long time. And there's people who work really hard in the treatment center industry. I'm in that business. You got bad people. Like any big institution, you got really good people. But if you called your doctor at around 2 o'clock in the morning and you were blind drunk or high, you're going to get an answering service. And if you called your counselor or a treatment center or your therapist, you better have insurance or cash. But if you call an alcoholic at 2 or 2:30 in the morning and say you're in trouble, you know you're going to hear something like this: I'm on my way and I'm bringing a couple of guys with me. And we will get you in the car and take you to detox for free. For fun and for free. And then talk about it at home group the next night, how we took Joe to a detox. He's going to be coming in a few days. Let's get ready for him. And we'll circle the wagons. And we'll nurse you back to health for fun and for free. We're not doctors. We don't claim to be doctors or therapists or psychiatrists. We might do that privately. But in here, God knew that. He didn't need a professional treating us or somebody with really highly, credentialed. One drunk talking to another drunk has been going on. I think we're going to be 90 years old soon. It works. Now, I'm in that professional community. They're baffled by it. Because every 5 years there's a new fad on how to treat people like us. There's a new therapy, there's a new modality, there's a new something. Bless their hearts, they're working hard. A new medication is something. And you come to an AA meeting, sit down with a drunk, and you feel better. Go through the steps, you change. It's an assembly line for spiritual awakening. And now I bring it back home when I think about what my family life is like. My dad and I got incredibly close. I was terrified of this man growing up, intimidated. I'd rather not be around him. And he was brutal with me growing up, and he admitted that in his later years. And because of sobriety, we became incredibly close. I'll confess, I'm missing the hell out of him this Christmas. Because tomorrow I'd probably be at his house. At times we have like an 8-hour dinner. The food doesn't stop. And you can't even get up to go outside. Where are you going? But he and I got incredibly close, and my brothers, who didn't know what to do with me, my middle brother was a little strict with me, have sought counsel with me on a lot of things. My kid brother was on the phone with me and my wife yesterday. He has bipolar, and he was in a bad spot yesterday. Today, thank you God, he's a little bit better. But those relationships have changed with my family, my extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins. And up until my grandparents passed away, I was invited into their home, and they weren't worried about leaving money or jewelry out anymore when I showed up. I was invited in. This is a huge miracle for a guy like me. And it's just, quite frankly, God's mercy. When I was out there, I really didn't care about anyone. How could I? I don't care about me. I didn't care about my family or my brothers. In fact, I despised all of them because they were living what I call good lives, and I'm an animal. And the envy and jealousy was in full play. When my brother was successful in the business world, I hated him for it. And when my brother wanted it, the other brother wanted to become an actor and go to California. It's what I wanted to do as a musician, and I hated him for it. My dad would be cooking dinner for everyone. It was very homey, and I hated him for it because I'm an animal and I can't do that. I'm dirty all the time. And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I tell you this from the bottom of my heart, I don't feel dirty anymore. I don't feel dirty about being Peter Marinelli. I'm still a work in progress, but I don't feel dirty. I put my head on the pillow. I remember what I did that day. I have hope for the next day. My wife and I in the morning have our coffee together. We talk about the day. She calls it as Pete sees it. And we start our day off. It's clean. And I got that from Alcoholics Anonymous and teachers, sponsors. Some of the old-timer, the women in AA who walk with grace and dignity and dressed proper for a meeting. There's a few of them here tonight who were just solid. They weren't looking for anything. And they got their girls and they kind of circled the wagons from the wolves. It said, she's with us. And it was just, I watched this. I became part of that. I'll never give that up a day at a time. Alcoholics Anonymous is giving me my whole life. The clothes I'm wearing, where I live, the money I have, my marriage, my health, the car I drive, everything is because of God and Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll get out of your hair with this. It'll take 1 minute, I promise. I was given a book. It sat on my nightstand for about, 6 months or a year. It has nothing to do with AA, this book. I picked it up and it started talking to me, and there was little italicized writing. Joe and Charlie used to call it squiggly writing, and I paid attention to it. And this is what the author says, because he's talking about us. It says this: may I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. That's my Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm very grateful to be a part of that. And I never want to lose my seat in here. That's all I got.